There are experiences happening to you that you can't explain to anyone. Patterns too perfect to be coincidence. Dreams that feel more real than waking life. Knowledge arriving without learning. Sensing things before they happen. Carl Jung spent his entire career studying these phenomena, and he made a shocking discovery. These aren't symptoms of losing your mind. They're evidence of finding yourself. Today, I'll reveal the 5 profound experiences Jung identified that only occur in spiritually awakened individuals. Experiences so specific, so undeniable, that once you recognize them, you'll understand exactly where you are in your awakening journey. And if you're having these experiences, you'll finally understand why you feel so alone. It's not because you're crazy. It's because you're conscious in ways most people aren't yet. Here's what changes everything. Jung discovered that spiritual awakening isn't just a shift in perspective. It activates dormant psychological functions that have been sleeping in the human psyche. These aren't metaphors or mystical concepts. They're observable psychological phenomena that fundamentally alter how you experience reality. And once activated, they can't be turned off. The first one will sound familiar if you're truly awakening. Jung coined the term synchronicity, but most people completely misunderstand what he meant. It's not just meaningful coincidences. It's what Jung called an Acausal Connecting Principle, reality beginning to communicate with you through patterns that defy logical explanation. Here's what only awakened people experience. Synchronicities stop being occasional surprises and become a constant dialogue. You think of someone and they call within minutes. You have a question and a stranger mentions the exact answer in passing. You see repeating numbers, 1111, 333, 444. Not occasionally, but multiple times daily. Books fall off shelves open to the exact passage you need. Songs contain messages that speak directly to your situation. Jung documented this extensively in his own awakening. He wrote, "Synchronicities are not random. They are the universe becoming conscious of itself through you." But here's what he discovered that changes everything. Synchronicities only intensify for those whose consciousness has reached a specific threshold. It's like tuning into a frequency that was always broadcasting, but you couldn't hear before. One of Jung's patients, a rational scientist, described it perfectly. "I used to live in a world of cause and effect. Now I live in a world of meaning and connection. Every day feels like reality is having a conversation with me through seemingly random events that are anything but random. A billboard answers my morning question. A bird appears at the exact moment I need confirmation. My dead grandmother's favorite song plays when I'm making the decision she would have guided me through." But here's the part that only awakened people understand. You can't force synchronicities. The moment you try to make them happen or use them for ego purposes, they stop. They only flow when you're aligned with what Jung called the self, your deepest truth. It's like reality itself can tell when you're being authentic versus when you're performing. This creates a profound loneliness. How do you explain to someone that reality is literally talking to you? That you're not seeing signs everywhere because you're delusional, but because you've become conscious enough to perceive the interconnected web Jung called the unus mundus, the unified field underlying all existence. Most people think you're either lying or losing it. They'll say you're seeing patterns that aren't there, engaging in magical thinking, projecting meaning onto randomness. And you can't prove them wrong because synchronicities can't be demonstrated on demand. They're not performances. They're private communications between you and the universe. Jung was clear about this. The privilege of consciousness is also its burden. You see what others cannot, and this seeing separates you from those who remain unconscious. Synchronicities become your secret language with reality, beautiful, profound, and utterly isolating. But the second experience is even more transformative. This is Jung's most important discovery that nobody talks about. The transcendent function isn't transcendence in the spiritual bypass sense. It's a psychological capacity that only emerges in awakened individuals. The ability to hold opposites without choosing sides, to live in paradox without needing resolution. Here's what this actually means. While everyone else is trapped in either-or thinking, you suddenly experience both and consciousness. You can feel profound grief and deep joy simultaneously. You can see someone's divine essence and their human shadow at the same time. You can know that life is meaningless and infinitely meaningful in the same breath. Jung wrote, "The transcendent function is the bridge between consciousness and the unconscious. It allows opposing forces to create a third thing, not a compromise, but a new creation that includes both, yet transcends both." Let me make this concrete. Before awakening, you're either optimistic or pessimistic, spiritual or material, logical or intuitive. After the transcendent function activates, you're simultaneously all of these. You become what Jung called a living paradox, capable of containing contradictions that would tear an ordinary psyche apart. One of Jung's patients described the moment it activated. "It was like my mind suddenly became vast enough to hold everything. I could feel my mother's death as the worst thing that ever happened, and the most important gift I ever received. Both were completely true, not balanced against each other, both fully, simultaneously true. My mind didn't break from the contradiction. It expanded to hold it." This is why awakened people often seem confusing to others. You can be deeply spiritual while being completely grounded, fully present while seeing through time, absolutely committed while totally detached. To the linear mind, you seem inconsistent, contradictory, even hypocritical. But you're not confused, you're comprehensive. The transcendent function also manifests as spontaneous wisdom. Solutions to impossible problems just arrive. You know things without knowing how you know them. Creative insights download fully formed. This isn't channeling or spiritual fantasy. It's what Jung called the collaborative creation between conscious and unconscious that only happens when the transcendent function bridges them. But here's the challenge. Once the transcendent function activates, you can't participate in most human conflicts anymore. Arguments require taking sides. Drama needs you to choose victim or villain. Politics demands you pick a team. But you see the truth and shadow in all positions. You understand that every perspective contains both wisdom and ignorance. This makes you useless to anyone trying to recruit you to their cause. You're too aware of complexity for simplistic narratives, too conscious of paradox for rigid ideologies. You become what Jung called psychologically unemployable by any system that requires true believers. And this leads directly to the third experience. Everyone dreams, but Jung discovered that in awakened individuals, dreams undergo a fundamental transformation. They stop being random neural firing or simple wish fulfillment and become what he called communications from the self, direct transmissions from your deepest wisdom. Here's what changes. Your dreams become lucid without trying. Not lucid in the sense of controlling them, but lucid in being consciously present while they unfold. You're simultaneously the dreamer, the dream, and the witness. You receive teachings, initiations, and guidance that you remember word for word upon waking. Jung documented his own experience extensively in his Red Book. He wrote, "My dreams ceased to be dreams and became visions. Not hallucinations of a disturbed mind, but communications from depths of the psyche that only open to those who have developed the capacity to receive them." But here's what only awakened people experience: prophetic dreams that actually manifest. You dream of conversations that happen verbatim days later. You see people you've never met who appear in your life exactly as dreamed. You receive warnings that save you from disasters. Solutions to problems arrive fully formed in dream symbols that make perfect sense. One of Jung's analysands, a businessman with no spiritual background, shared this. "I started having dreams that came true, not symbolically, literally. I dreamed my brother calling about our father's heart attack 3 days before it happened. I dreamed the exact conversation with my boss about a promotion, down to his tie color, a week before it occurred. I can't tell anyone because they'd think I'm delusional. But I'm not predicting the future. I'm remembering it from my dreams." Even more profound are what Jung called big dreams. Dreams so powerful they change your entire life trajectory. These aren't ordinary dreams you analyze for meaning. They're initiatory experiences that transform you at the cellular level. You wake up fundamentally different. You've been somewhere, met something, undergone an ordeal that was more real than physical reality. Jung identified specific markers of awakened dreaming, encounters with luminous beings who teach through presence rather than words, journeys through landscapes that exist nowhere on Earth yet feel like home, symbols that carry such profound meaning that seeing them changes how you understand existence. Deaths and rebirths so vivid you wake up feeling you've actually died and returned. But here's the isolating part. These dreams are incommunicable. You can describe them, but you can't transmit their essence. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's never seen. The dreams carry a quality of the sacred, the numinous, what Jung called the holy. And this quality can't be conveyed through words. You might try sharing them, but you see the blank looks, the polite nods, the subtle disconnection. People either think you're making it up or reading too much into normal dreams. They can't grasp that you're not interpreting symbols. You're receiving direct transmission. The dreams aren't metaphors for your life. They're more real than your life. This creates a profound split. Your dream life becomes more meaningful than your waking life. You start looking forward to sleep not for rest, but for reunion with depths of reality unavailable to waking consciousness. You realize what Jung meant when he said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." But the awakening happens through a kind of dreaming that only the awakened can access. Before we explore the final two experiences that only the awakened encounter, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share in the comments which of these experiences has been most intense for you. Your validation might help someone else trust their own awakening. Now, these last two experiences are the most profound and the most difficult to integrate. If you're experiencing these phenomena, reality speaking through synchronicities, holding paradox without breaking, dreams more real than waking, you're not imagining things, you're perceiving things. There's a massive difference, and Jung spent his life documenting it. This is Jung's most radical insight that modern spirituality completely misunderstands. Awakening doesn't destroy the ego. It destroys the ego's monopoly on consciousness. What Jung called the ego-self axis, the relationship between your everyday personality and your deepest essence, undergoes complete reorganization. Here's what actually happens. You start experiencing yourself as multiple centers of consciousness simultaneously. There's the you going to work, paying bills, having conversations. But there's also what Jung called the self, a vast impersonal awareness watching your life unfold like a movie. And you're both, at the same time, fully. Jung wrote, "The experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego." But he didn't mean the ego disappears. He meant it discovers it's not the CEO, it's middle management. And this demotion is simultaneously the most humiliating and liberating experience possible. Let me be specific about what only awakened people experience here. You'll be in a conversation, fully engaged, while simultaneously observing yourself from outside. Not dissociation. Full presence from multiple perspectives. You watch yourself getting triggered and choose whether to act on it. You see your patterns playing out in real time and can step out of them mid-sentence. One of Jung's patients described it brilliantly. "I'm living a split-screen existence. On one screen, I'm a person with a history, personality, preferences. On the other, I'm infinite awareness having a temporary human experience. Neither is more real than the other. I'm not choosing between them. I'm living as both simultaneously. It's maddening and miraculous." This creates experiences that sound insane to anyone who hasn't undergone this restructuring. You feel ancient beyond measure and brand new in each moment. You know yourself as both the drop and the ocean, literally, experientially, not as a metaphor. You experience what Jung called the relativization of the ego. Your personal self becomes just one of many possible configurations of consciousness you can inhabit. But here's what makes this so challenging. The ego doesn't go quietly. It fights back with what Jung called inflation, moments where it tries to claim the self's experiences as its own achievements. "I'm awakened. I'm special. I'm beyond ordinary consciousness." This is the ego trying to own what can't be owned, and the universe responds with what Jung called compensation. Humbling experiences that remind you that you're both infinite and utterly ordinary. You might experience cosmic consciousness one moment and struggle to remember where you parked the next. You'll channel profound wisdom, then say something completely stupid. You'll feel enlightened, then act out your shadows in embarrassing ways. This isn't failure, it's the ongoing dance between ego and self that defines awakened life. Jung was clear. The goal is not to eliminate the ego, but to relativize it. The awakened person lives in constant negotiation between personal and transpersonal, human and divine, limited and limitless. You become comfortable being both a somebody and a nobody, someone special and completely insignificant. This is why awakened people often seem contradictory, deeply confident yet genuinely humble, powerful yet surrendered, knowing yet innocent. They're not pretending or confused. They're living from multiple levels of identity simultaneously, each one true at its own level. But the fifth experience is perhaps the strangest of all. This is Jung's most misunderstood concept. Living mythologically doesn't mean pretending your life is a fairy tale. It means recognizing that you're simultaneously living a personal life and enacting universal patterns Jung called archetypes. You become conscious that your individual story is also a cosmic story being told through you. Here's what this actually feels like. You realize your difficult mother isn't just your mother. She's the dark mother archetype working through a human being. Your job loss isn't just unemployment, it's a death rebirth initiation. Your relationship isn't just romance, it's the sacred marriage of opposites playing out in human form. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But who you truly are includes archetypal forces far greater than your personal identity. When you awaken, these forces become conscious, and you experience yourself as both the actor and the role, the human and the myth." Let me give you specific examples only awakened people understand. You'll be in an argument with your partner and suddenly see you're not just John and Jane fighting about dishes. You're enacting the eternal tension between masculine and feminine principles. You'll face a challenge at work and recognize you're not just solving a problem. You're the hero facing the dragon, and the outcome matters on levels beyond the personal. One of Jung's most awakened patients described it. "I'm living in two movies simultaneously. One is my regular life, work, relationships, daily tasks. The other is an eternal drama where I'm playing out humanity's deepest patterns. When my father died, I wasn't just losing my dad. I was experiencing the death of the father archetype, and my grief was both personal and transpersonal. I was grieving for everyone who's ever lost a father, and they were grieving through me." This archetypal awareness extends to recognizing when you're being constellated, Jung's term for when an archetype activates through you. You'll feel the warrior rise when facing injustice. The healer awakens when someone's wounded. The teacher emerges when wisdom needs transmission. These aren't roles you're choosing. They're archetypal forces using you as their instrument. But here's what's truly wild. You start recognizing other people's archetypal configurations too. You see who's possessed by the victim, who's channeling the tyrant, who's embodying the lover. You understand that most human conflict is archetypal patterns clashing, not personal differences. This gives you tremendous compassion. People aren't choosing to be difficult. They're unconsciously acting out archetypal scripts. Jung discovered that truly awakened individuals eventually experience what he called archetypal dreams, direct encounters with these primordial forces. You don't dream about a wise old man. You meet the wise old man. You don't dream about your mother. You encounter the Great Mother. These beings are more real than dream figures. They're living psychological forces that exist independently of your personal psyche. The mythological life also means recognizing what Jung called your personal myth, the unique story your soul is here to live. This isn't your ego's ambition or society's expectation. It's the deep pattern encoded in your psyche from birth, what Jung called your innate destiny. You discover you're not making your life up as you go. You're uncovering a story that was always there, waiting to be lived. This creates the strangest experience of all, prophetic living. You start sensing what's coming in your story before it arrives, not because you're psychic, but because you're conscious of the mythological pattern unfolding. You know the dark night of the soul is coming before the crisis hits. You feel the call to adventure before the opportunity appears. You recognize the threshold guardian before the test arrives. Here's what Jung understood that changes everything. These 5 experiences aren't random spiritual phenomena. They're symptoms of humanity's next evolutionary leap. Each awakened individual who experiences them is participating in what Jung called the collective individuation of mankind. Think about what these experiences actually mean. Synchronicities reveal an interconnected universe responding to consciousness. The Transcendent Function shows the psyche evolving beyond dualistic thinking. Prophetic dreams suggest time isn't what we think it is. The ego-self-axis restructuring demonstrates consciousness isn't confined to personality. Living mythologically reveals that individual lives are expressions of universal patterns. Jung saw these not as mystical experiences, but as psychological capacities that have been dormant in humanity, waiting for the right conditions to activate. And those conditions? They're the very chaos, meaninglessness, and suffering of modern life. The crisis isn't a mistake, it's the catalyst. He wrote, "The spiritual problem of modern man forces him to experience these things, not because he seeks them, but because consciousness itself is evolving, and these are the symptoms of its evolution. This is why you can't go back once these experiences begin. You can't unexperience synchronicity once you've lived in constant dialogue with reality. You can't return to either or thinking once the transcendent function activates. You can't have ordinary dreams once you've received transmission from the self. You can't live only as ego once you've experienced the self. You can't see life as random events once you've recognized the mythological patterns." Jung called this the irreversibility of consciousness. Each awakening experience changes your psychological structure permanently. You're not the same species anymore, psychologically speaking. You've evolved into what Jung called modern man in search of a soul, but having found it, you discover it's vaster than anything you imagined. This is profoundly isolating. You're living in a different reality than most people around you. Not a better reality, a more comprehensive one. You see what they see, but you also see what they don't. You experience what they experience, plus dimensions they can't access. You're like someone with color vision in a world where most people see in black and white. You can't prove colors exist to those who can't see them. But here's Jung's most important insight. These experiences aren't meant to separate you from humanity, but to serve it. Each person who develops these capacities becomes what he called a beacon of consciousness for the collective. Not through teaching or preaching, but through living. Your very existence as someone experiencing these realities makes them more possible for others. Jung believed we're in a race between consciousness and catastrophe. Either enough individuals awaken to these experiences to shift the collective, or humanity remains trapped in unconscious patterns that lead to destruction. Each person who develops synchronistic awareness, transcendent function, prophetic dreaming, ego-self-axis, and mythological living adds to what Jung called the sum total of consciousness available to humanity. You're not having these experiences for yourself alone. You're having them for everyone who can't yet. You're pioneering psychological territories that will one day be common ground. What feels like isolation is actually profound service. What seems like personal awakening is collective evolution happening through you. If you're experiencing these 5 phenomena, if reality speaks to you through synchronicities, if you hold paradox without breaking, if your dreams are transmissions, if you live as both ego and self, if you recognize the myths living through you, you're not alone. You're part of what Jung saw as humanity's most important transformation. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to join thousands who understand these experiences. Share in the comments which of these 5 you're experiencing most intensely right now. Your courage in naming these realities helps others trust their own psychological evolution. Remember Jung's words. The meeting with oneself is, at first, the the meeting with one's own shadow. But beyond the shadow lies experiences that redefine what it means to be human. Trust what you're experiencing. It's not madness, it's metamorphosis. To go deeper into Jung's map of awakening consciousness, click the video on your screen now.